Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 13 of GT Masters, the review series for Gran Turismo's pretty decent selection of GT style or GT class racing machines, and some cars which aren't strictly speaking GT class, but which fall under very similar regulation styles and vehicle styles, such as the Zonda R or FXX, etc. And in this particular episode we're featuring a slightly lower class GT style racing model. It's an endurance race car, and it's not an obvious choice of race car to go for. You don't see a massive amount of people using it. I rarely see people using it, to be honest. I know of some who enjoy using the car, but it doesn't get a massive amount of use from most people. And the car in question is the Spoon S2000. It's an interesting little race car, because it has some very particular advantages over some of the other race cars, but also potentially some disadvantages depending on the opposition and the circuit. For a start, it's powered by, unsurprisingly, a 2-litre VTEC engine. That engine can be tuned up to 402 horsepower, so it's not going to break any records. It's running roughly half the power of many of the other cars in this series. There are some exceptions, of course, but as a general rule, that's the kind of disadvantage that you're looking at. As far as torque, just under, or just over even, 200 pound-feet. Again, not that inspiring. But it only weighs 1,050 kilos, and that is significantly lighter than many big level GT cars on Gran Turismo. The Nismo RJN GTR, for instance, or the M3 GT2, or the FXX, to name just three. And even though it doesn't have a huge amount of power, the fact that the weight is relatively low means that it does still put out 383 horsepower per tonne, which isn't amazing. I'm not going to say that that is amazing, it's not, but for the power, it's respectable. The PP is 521, which is good. You really wouldn't want it to be much higher than that. And the price is 125,000. So it is one of the cheapest GT style race cars in the game. The question is though, is it worth buying? Not is it necessarily worth 125,000, because that's a completely different question. The real question is, should you buy one? Well, as with all cars, it depends very much on what kind of driver you are, what kind of racing you plan to do, because depending on that, of course, it completely changes what kind of car you should use. If you're looking purely for straight line performance, obviously I would not recommend the Spoon. It's just not that quick in a straight line compared to many of the other cars in the series. But if you're looking something for, or looking for something for lower PP, lower power, twisty circuits or endurance races against slightly lower vehicles, then it is definitely a car that you should consider. The handling, for instance, on the Spoon is superb. The fact that it only has just over 400 horsepower to deal with means that it is very easy to drive. And the chassis is pretty much constantly under stressed. It's never really being pushed as hard as an 800 or 900 horsepower car would be. So you can throw it around corners without needing to worry about losing control. The car has phenomenal grip, amazing drivability, it's very beginner friendly and very fun to drive. The low weight means that it can maintain very, very high average speeds around tracks where other cars will be constantly slowing down and speeding up, such as Ascari, the Nuremberg Ring, Laguna Seca, Suzuka, etc. On tracks such as the Le Mans, obviously I wouldn't recommend it, but even then, against lower PP or lower powered race cars, it could actually take them on tracks like that. If you were to, for instance, restrict something like an FXX as an example, I don't think it's actually possible to restrict the FXX down to this car's power, but if you did, this Honda would have a perfect chance of beating it. Because it's all well and good having superior performance when you're running more than double the power. If you bring those other cars down to the same level as the Spoon, it's going to beat them. And that is something to bear in mind for that lower power and lower PP racing. Because when you bring this car into its element and level the playing field, it's a monster. As far as value for money, I would say 125 grand is very good. Not just because it's a race car, but because it is a genuinely good race car. It's fun, it's easy to use, and it is competitive at what it does. As far as whether you should buy it, well, that is completely dependent on what kind of race driver you are. If you're looking for something specifically for what this car is good at, then yes, I would recommend it. If, though, you're looking to buy your first GT class machine, or if you're looking for a dependable and competitive all-rounder, probably not. Because as brilliant as it is at what it does is very limited in range. Whereas something like an 800 or 900 horsepower machine can always be restricted, that doesn't work both ways. You can't get this car to be up to that level. So, for the right driver, I'd definitely recommend it. For the wrong driver, well, perhaps not. But that's it overall for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.